Hey guys, before we kind of get into the rest of this video, this was pre-recorded yesterday following what happened Monday night in the Bills Bengals game. Before we kind of get started, I do just want to say our thoughts and prayers here go out to the Hamlin family, and especially we are pulling for Damar Hamlin. Really have no other new information on the situation. But before we get into the rest of this video, I do just want to give our thoughts and prayers because it was a surreal situation and just the human aspect of all of us. You just really feel for him and feel for his family and his friends. And I just want to say we're all keeping them in our thoughts and prayers for the Hamlin family. But hope you guys can enjoy the rest of today's video. Welcome to the Vikings Now. I am your host, Patrick Seatman. We're going to be diving into the latest Vikings playoff picture, kind of going over the certain scenarios where the Vikings could end up and who they could be playing in the NFC playoffs. We're going to be also talking about some injury news with Brian O'Neill, Austin Schlottmann, and Brian Asamoah. They were hurt against the Green Bay Packers yesterday. We're also going to be talking about that game a little bit at the back half. But the NFC playoff picture, it's looking like this right now. The Eagles, they lost yesterday to the producer Trace's New Orleans Saints, and then the Niners got a win yesterday, kicking the Vikings down to the 3 seed. But the Vikings, they had a great opportunity yesterday to get that number 1 seed in the NFC and still be in the running heading into Week 18, but they lost, and it's going to cost them because now they are locked in to the 3 seed most likely with the Dallas Cowboys at the 5 seed and the Giants. The Giants right there at the number 6 seed, they are locked in to that number 6 spot, leaving the Seahawks, Lions, and, of course, the dirty Green Bay Packers fighting for that 7 seed. But like I was saying, I think the Vikings are likely locked into that 3 seed. Pretty much what would have to happen is the Niners would need to lose to the Cardinals this upcoming week. It's not going to happen. And the Vikings would need to beat the Chicago Bears this weekend. But about that Bears game, I am curious. So Kevin O'Connell, he said today in his press conference, he said he expects to play the starters majority of that game. I just don't see it. I think the Vikings are kind of under the understanding that the Niners are going to handle business against the Cardinals. I really don't expect them to lose that number 2 seed. I think the Niners will hold it down. And I think the Vikings, win or lose to the Bears, you're not going to drop to the 4 seed. You're going to be locked into that number 3 seed. And I think that leaves the New York Giants as being the team who probably 99% likely the Vikings are going to play them in Wild Card Weekend in Minnesota, and that would be a hell of a game because the last time we played them was that whiteout game. Greg Joseph hit that 61-yarder. It was back and forth the entire game. I would be very interested in a Vikings-Giants Wild Card Weekend matchup. But let me know what you guys have to think about the Giants. I'm very curious about this. Out of all the teams we could play, obviously you got the Packers, Lions, the divisional opponents, which most likely won't play them because they'll get the 7 seed. But the Giants. Are you scared of the New York Giants? Are you scared of Daniel Jones, Saquon Barkley, and Brian Dable rolling in the U.S. Bank Stadium and getting a win against this Viking group? Let me know in the comments down below. Type Y for yes, N for no. Get down in the comments and let me know your thoughts on the Vikings playing the New York Giants. Now, we got some Vikings injury news because some big injuries happened yesterday, especially with the right tackle, Brian O'Neill. But first, it was broke by Tom Pelissero midway through the game yesterday. He said Vikings center Austin Schlottmann suffered a fractured fibula, probably one of the worst injuries you can have against the Packers per a source. He'll miss several weeks at least. Brutal day all around for Minnesota. Schlottmann's done for the year. It was just confirmed earlier today that he will not be playing anymore. And with Garrett Bradbury dealing with that back injury, likely to be back this week, it leaves the Vikings in an interesting position. Because if you look at this depth chart right here, Chris Reed, who was slated under the left guard spot, he had to fill in and play center yesterday, and it was bad. And it's funny because Chris Reed going into this year, I was very high on him. I thought he was going to be a guy who can play any of the interior offensive line positions, left guard, center, or right guard, but I never thought I would be saying this. The Vikings need Bradbury back bad. You know, going into this offseason, it was signed J.C. Treader. It was bringing another center. Garrett Bradbury sucks. He's a bust of a first-round pick. But now looking at the Vikings and the situation they're in, we need Garrett Bradbury back bad. I would be very excited if he could get back this week, but he's dealing with that back injury. And you know those big boys in the trenches, they're dealing with a back injury. It could really knock them out for multiple weeks and just something that could really bother them. So we'll see how they play that. Garrett Bradbury, we need you back. He's dealing with that back injury. But some other Minnesota Vikings injury news, probably the biggest one from the game. was offensive tackle Brian O'Neill. He was ruled out for the rest of the game with a calf injury versus the Packers, and he is supposed to have an MRI actually today. We haven't heard anything from that so far. And then Brian Asamoah, he also did not return with a knee injury. He looks to be okay, but this is not too good. If the Vikings would have to go into the playoffs without Bradbury or O'Neill, so you're saying we're going to have from left to right, we're starting left tackle all the way to right tackle. Christian Darrisaw, love him. He's an all-pro left tackle. Ezra Cleveland, hit or miss. You're going to have to play Chris Reed at center next to Ed Ingram and Oli Uda, who filled in at the right tackle spot. The Vikings might be cooked. If that's the offensive line you're rolling out, especially against that New York Giants team with Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, especially Dexter Lawrence getting that interior pressure, this really concerns me. But I want to know what you guys have to say. How concerned are you with these injuries, especially to the offensive line? The Vikings are pretty healthy across the board, but the offensive line injuries are really starting to build up. I'm probably sitting at an 8 or a 9 right now because, hey, you have Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau rolling the U.S. Bank Stadium in Wild Card Weekend. They could game wreck a game, and they can knock you out of the playoffs. Let me know, scale it 1 to 10, how concerned are you with these injuries to the offensive line? We have a great deal going on right now at chatsports.com/Vikings combo. You can get those 2 T-shirts ahead of the Vikings playoff run. You want to be rocking some Vikings gear, whether it's around the house or if you're going to the game. Go to chatsports.com/Vikings combo. There's a great deal going on right now. You get both these T-shirts for a very reasonable price. The gray, the purple, you can choose whatever one you want. Go to chatsports.com/Vikings combo. Now, kind of touching on the game yesterday, I mean, I can't believe this is actually the final score, 41-17. Kirk Cousins struggled throughout most of the games. A couple of those interceptions weren't necessarily his fault. They were tipped at the line of scrimmage. But Dalvin Cook only getting going with 9 carries, 27 yards. TJ Hawkinson, the leading reception getter for the Vikings yesterday with 7 receptions for 59 yards. And Aaron Rodgers, he really just had to play game manager yesterday for the Green Bay Packers. Their defense and special teams really carried the way with Aaron Jones. I mean, the Packers averaging I don't know the number off the top of my head, but they were running the ball like crazy against the Minnesota Vikings. And Allen Lazard, obviously the passing game, going to get going too much for the Vikes. But my biggest concern with this Vikings team is obviously the defense. I mean, you look at some of these defensive numbers going into the playoffs. I mean, this is a 12-4 team. And you look at these defensive stats. This is a 12-4 ball club, giving up 416 yards per game, 31st in the NFL. 281 yards passing a game. That is dead last in the NFL. And it's funny, I actually said the Vikings rush defense a couple weeks ago. They're starting to get it back going. They're starting to be in the top half of the league, giving up 120 yards a game now. And then now, already giving up 25 points per game at 28th in the NFL. Kind of shifting the offense here. Yards per game for this team, they've been overall really good. It's been really carried by Kirk Cousins and this passing game. But right there, that is what concerns me the most, is the rushing yards per game. The Vikings have not been able to consistently rush the ball at all this year. And I think it has something huge to do with what I think is the biggest problem on this Minnesota Vikings team. They have been dominated by physical teams, and this is the biggest issue with the Minnesota Vikings. When they lost to the Dallas Cowboys, when they lost to the Philadelphia Eagles, when they lost to the Green Bay Packers, they were blown out in all those games, and I could tell that they just got outmanned in the trenches. When you look at the line of scrimmage, whatever the other team was, whether it was the Cowboys, Packers, or Eagles, they pushed the Vikings off the ball about 5 yards every time. And if they can't win in the trenches, that's going to be a problem in the playoffs. Because, hey, the Giants, they might not have the skill and the weapon guys that we have on the outsides, but they're way better in the trenches than we are. And we're going to have to something's going to have to change. We're going to have more dog in our game, and it's going to have to start with guys like if Garrett Bradbury can come back, Ed Ingram, Harrison Phillips on the defensive side of the ball, Dalvin Tomlinson. So I get it. The Vikings struggled yesterday. They got beat up in the trenches. But before we kind of get out of here, I kind of want to be positive because there are a ton of Vikings fans on Twitter, and it's understandable. You're getting blown out by your rival, the Green Bay Packers. I was upset too. I mean, I called my dad walking home from work yesterday, and I was just kind of in shock. I mean, it was a miserable experience. When you lose to the Green Bay Packers, you had a chance to knock them out of the playoffs. We'll just go over 5 things. Number 1, you're at least going to have 12 wins this year. You're already 12-4. You have a chance to beat the Bears this year. If I would have told you that going into the year, you would have been very happy. We won the NFC North. We're going to be hosting a home playoff game. We won the division. We took it back from the Green Bay Packers. And then Kevin O'Connell, he looks to be a great hire as the next Minnesota Vikings head coach. He knocked it out of the park. I mean, hey, Thank God we didn't hire Nathaniel Hackett. Justin Jefferson, he had an all-time year. He's probably not going to break Calvin Johnson's single-season receiving record, but still, he's leading the league in about everything when it comes to receiving, receptions, yards per game, 100-yard games, whatever it may be. And then this one. The Vikings, you're going to get a home playoff game, at least one. Obviously, the Niners slip up or the Eagles slip up. The Vikings will be at least hosting one playoff game. So just be positive. I understand we're getting blown out by the Packers, but here's 5 things that if you told me going in the year all 5 of these would happen, I mean, I would be ecstatic. I would be super ecstatic, actually. Thank you guys so much for watching, though. If you guys made it to the end of the video, I love doing this. The Real One roll call. Go type Real One in the comments section below. I'll show you guys some love. I love seeing the guys that make it all the way to the end of the video. Type Real One. See you guys next time. Let's go Vikes.